the media scene was very much, the traditional media was king and queen, let me say it that way. Even online wasn't still such a big thing. So I've actually had the pleasure of existing when traditional media was everything, and then came the online media, and then now came the podcasting and so on and so forth. So those days, if you had a music video out, because I work, with artists in the creative space, if your video wasn't on like KBC on my show, or it wasn't on NTV on The Beat, then you hadn't done anything. So a lot of people would approach me because I worked on that show for 8 years, and they would always tell me, like, you're so good for KBC. You should be at KTN or Citizen, and you should be somewhere else. And I always thought to myself, what is the point of leaving KBC to go to Citizen to do the same thing, right? So I'm the person who loves what I do, but if I will do it, if I'll go somewhere or do it differently, if I would continue to do it, I would have to add value onto it or do it differently. So I wouldn't leave KBC to go to Citizen to carry the same show. And everyone was like, no, you shouldn't be there. And I think a lot of people, rightfully so, think a lot about the money. They think if I go to KTN, I'll be paid double or whatever. But for me, I always thought about kind of the networking, the experience, and also the learning, because the show taught me a lot about what was happening in the industry. And I already learned from my 8-year tenure at the show that the industry was lacking female leaders, and especially in the PR and media space, because all the people who were coming for interviews were mostly males and accompanied by males. And I was just like, where are the females? And then my producer used to send me out, even at the BBC, I used to be sent out to do Vox Pops. So I was the person at the BBC being sent to just interview people, and all the females, they ran away. I go to campus and I was like, hello, excuse me, I'm from BBC. I want to ask you something. Females ran away. And my worst day of work used to be 31st of December. It was my saddest day, because you want to spend this day with your family, but it's the busiest day in the media space. So I would actually be sent by KBC on the streets, running out the whole night, interviewing people, asking them, how was your year? What were the highlights? What are you looking forward to next year? So when you watch the show, like 1st of January, they put it on TV. It's a very interesting combination in production, but nobody thinks how hard it was to put it together, because then my producer would actually send me back and say, all these are 10 males talking. I need 4 other females. So all this time, I'm seeing kind of a trend, like, why are the females not wanting to speak, and why are the females not being represented how they should be? And I'm already kind of mapping out something in my head, and I don't know what I'm mapping out. So I'm already thinking of an exit plan. I'm like, when I leave KBC, am I still going to be hosting a TV show, or what other position could I take that will actually be of value to the industry? And I did not know what this was even up until the last day that I did my last show, but I knew very well that I would never go back to TV and that same format, but I wanted to bring more representation for women in the industry. And when I left, I just left my TV show one night, and I called my mom the next day. I said, you won't see me on TV again, so tell your friends they won't see me. Because she was so proud, everywhere we went. I come from a small town, Molo, which is close to Nakuru. So everywhere, like if we go to the meetings, the Chama meetings, she tells all the women, and do you watch KBC? My daughter is on there every Monday night. So it was really heartbreaking for her to not be able to say, you can see my daughter on KBC. So I told her, like, I'm going to start a media company. I want to start a PR company. I want to work with artists. I want to, accompany them to interview. I want to prepare them. I want to, empower more women. I want to train women to do this. And it was very early stages of starting my media company. Well,
Anyiko, I'm going to give you a chance to tell us about Anyiko PR.
Yeah. And
just that story of that company.
I'm actually done. So that's how I got there.
Oh, yeah. No, there's more. We know how you got there, but I want to give you a chance to tell us about the actual founding of this company, the kind of things that you struggled with early on, and the big lessons that you've learned along the way. But I'm going to shift this to Hinda, and I want to hear from you as a journalist working in Somalia. of course, a very challenging environment for media generally. And I would say that's not unique to Somalia, but there's some particular kind of challenges that are there. What made you want to take the plunge and to actually become a media leader in your own right? What's your founding story?
As a Hinda, I always wanted to see a woman who leads something, even in media, especially in the media. Because when you see in the locally, women in the media Somalia, like majority of it, it's man-dominated, and you don't have the chance to lead something, even like the small things, producing program. You cannot lead. So I wanted as a Hinda to lead something and become a leader. So Bilan Media or Bilan gave me the opportunity to lead and become a leader for female professional media, and show the Somali community that women can lead, produce something valuable to the community instead of staying to the home or just cooking, because the only thing that they see is like, why are you going to the media? Because it's not good for you. It's not good for you to speak in front of the people, to come on the screen and say something. It's like, you cannot tell us something. So now we are showing them that we can lead, and we can show them more and cover more research that is needed by our community. And also we are representing the young females in the media, that so they can look for us and say, Bilan is leading Somalia and we can lead.
Bilan Media, I'm so glad that it exists. Like you're saying, in some of these situations, simply having a presence in the space is already enough to make a difference, right? The title of this panel is What Happens When Women Take Control? And as the Deputy High Commissioner said, the answer to that is everything. And what we're trying to do is to unpack what that everything means, right? I'm going to shift to you, Melissa, but in the meantime, I'd like to ask our audience to start thinking of some questions, because I'll be taking some questions and reflections in a bit. So Melissa, you gave us kind of high level of the founding of Africa Podcast. I want to ask you, what are some of the early challenges that you had? What are some of the things that maybe you thought would be a breeze, but ended up being like a minefield, and vice versa? Because I think some of our biggest lessons come from those kind of surprising and unexpected moments.
Yeah. Ooh, which ones do I say? So first of all, the biggest challenge was just being like, what is a podcast? And kind of thank you for that. Well, thank you for amplifying my voice. Just being in a space and defining something that was maybe a clue to a lot of some people, but not quite obvious as a potential powerhouse. So just explaining, why is podcasting important? Why is it relevant to Africans? Because we'd hear a lot about some of the responses we'd get in the beginning were things like, oh, but isn't that just like a small niche industry for like rich Americans in Silicon Valley? Which at the time really it was. It started off as like, so explaining that was surprisingly difficult. But then, then it reminded me and my co-founder. So I then found collaborators who were willing, passionate, and also crazy enough to jump in with me. And in combination, we had journalism experience, advocacy, and gender advocacy experience, and then me bringing in the just kind of gung-ho, let's ideate, let's strategize, let's get it done. So the three of us women, I just have to say that it wasn't a solo effort, even though the seed kind of came from me. Something else that was surprisingly easy is that the challenges are, yes, you know how we know it's very well documented how our culture can be very limiting for women, young people, etc. to start. But it was surprisingly open. So like starting something and just kind of being out there and starting it and then attracting the early adopters is surprisingly easy. So most of the challenge I found is actually in our minds still as women, partly because of traumatizing past experiences. So I'm not even, kind of blaming anyone who feels really scared, or if you feel like you're overthinking how challenging it'll be. It's true. It's because you've probably had experiences that have not affirmed you. But it's just been surprising how much space there is for us to occupy, and how much the biggest barrier is actually internal. And so just telling yourself a different story every day, and showing up in a different way really is what breaks down the doors.
I just want to share and put Melissa on the spot a bit. When we started Baraza, Africa Podfest was one of like our day ones. You were like one of the first people here. And I just want to affirm what you're saying, that at that time, I'm talking about like early 2020, literally the space was completely open. Like you could just start something in podcasting like they did. And then in a year's time, they're being quoted as experts in African podcasting because there are no experts, right? It was completely open. And I just want to say I was in the US like 3 months ago. And I was kind of attending a podcasting, what can I say? Session, crash course, whatever that you can call it, with a very kind of like senior level producer. I don't know how many of you are aware of America's Test Kitchen. So one of the producers was speaking and she was talking about, podcasting is growing in Africa. Africa, saying all these things. And then she was quoting an Africa Podfest report. According to Africa Podfest, and I was just like, Melissa is being quoted somewhere in Washington, as a global podcasting expert, because what she's saying is so true. In so many of these things that we have ideas that we want to go into, you might think that, oh my gosh, I need to like have the qualify, whatever, like I'm going to experience so many barriers. And then you're surprised that the thing is completely open and it's just for you to step in and do it.
I will say that in addition to that, the flip side of that, though, is that, of course, you've got to be good at what you're doing, even if you're learning along the way. But the flip side of that is somehow, especially for things that before they have a lot of money or before they're cute and attractive, people will just kind of allow the women or the marginalized person, the unusual suspect, if I may use that term, to do it. But once it grows, then everyone wants in. And then, kind of the risk there is people can try to, the power structure, the old power structure can kind of come in and try to own the groundwork that you've done. And so that's been another interesting challenge. Although because we were so loud from the beginning, it's hard to ignore Africa Podfest's work and the work of Baraza Lab, Semabox, the early players. But it's a big risk as well when you're a starter.
Right. Anyiko, does what Melissa has said kind of resonate with you? I saw you nodding your head. What kind of experiences surprised you when you started Anyiko PR? As a journalist, I worked a lot with PR companies when I was a reporter. You really can't avoid that kind of contact, I would say, because PR is like a really key kind of node in the information ecosystem, right? And, journalists have their own issues with PR. But I just want to give you a chance now. What is something that kind of surprised you as you were starting? And what is something that you thought would be hard, which was easy, and which you thought was easy, but was actually hard in experience? Yeah.
Thank you. I think for me, the challenges started a long time ago. In fact, if I'm having any challenges at my company, Anyiko Public Relations, it's really nothing, because before that, I experienced so many problems that it led me to that. But and then also the thing is, you don't wake up and start like a PR company, you know, it's years and years of experience and network, and somebody said your network is your net worth. But I realized earlier on that people work very hard to erase your contribution and the work that you've done, especially in PR, because it's intangible. You know, you spoke to so many people, you called many people, but no one ever saw that. You know, I spent so many sleepless nights, I don't know, uploading Sauti Sol music videos and tweeting and opening all the accounts, all of them. You know, I did that, but nobody knows, only I know. So it gets to a point where you are a PR person and working with, you know, popular people, bands, and then they blow up. What she spoke about, you know, people start to come to invest in them, they get sponsorships and new managers, and then they try to erase your contribution and just don't credit you for the work you did, and over and above that, actually don't pay you for it. That has happened to me so many times, and I think that is one of the reasons why I thought I have to open my company to have control over the finances and over my value and over my time. But if I would leave it out to the people and to the industry, I was never treated right. You know, that's something I can, you know, say just openly and clearly. So that was always such a big challenge. And yeah. And on the flip side, I think it was very easy to start my company, and it was very easy to do what I wanted to do because I was passionate in it. And, you know, no one stops you from opening your company. All you have to do is just go register it, you know, follow the laws and regulations of the Republic of Kenya. So that wasn't hard. I think once I set up the company, the difficulty was converting it into a business. And especially when you are a journalist with experience in the industry, or you know how the industry runs, but you don't know how business runs. So that was a major challenge. I started wishing, I wish I studied, you know, business, or I wish I studied project management. So that was a big challenge, because in the beginning, a lot of people took advantage of that just because the company didn't have a project manager, or I didn't understand how certain things would be working. So I had to fail to learn from the failures and, you know, get the professionals who can help me run aspects of the business that I can't run. And I'm also very proud to say that there's a woman who pushed me towards that side and saw that I was struggling and called me for a meeting, Caroline Motoko, because she had been following the success of Sauti Sol. So one day she called me from Norway. It's like my phone rang and it was, "This is Caroline Motoko." And I was like, "What? You know, who are you to be receiving a phone call from Caroline Motoko?" And she was like, "I've always wondered what you do, and I wanted to speak to you." So she called me over to their offices, and I went over there. She called her business partner, I think the CEO of Radio Africa, and she was telling him that one day, if we want to have like a PR company, we should invest in this lady. And then she started asking me, "How do you run your business? How many people do you work for you? How much are they paid? Where do you get the money to run your business?" And everything was just wrong. You know, I was actually running my business from my life savings, because I'm big on saving, and I've always been saving since I was at KBC. So that's how I was running my business. So you have to have an investment to start a business. So it will either be your savings, or it will be a loan, or it will be somebody, I don't know, giving you money, but you do have to have the actual money. So I was using my savings. So she was able to direct me as to how to try turn the initial investment from my savings into a business. She just took me through it on paper. You know, she also asked me, like, what are your costs? How much do you charge to do this? How many people work for you? And it seems like a very easy thing, but it's not easy, especially if you just don't have a business mind. So it was something very selfless of her to do. So I'm happy she did that for me, and I try as much as possible to do the same for others, especially for young women in the industry. Yeah.
You have just gotten me to my next question organically, which is, who are some of the women that have supported you? If you are comfortable mentioning them by name, or if not, what kind of support did they give you, right? And how are you paying it forward? I will let you just sit on that for a minute and address our online audience. Thank you for being with us today. We're welcoming your questions and comments on the platform. So please go ahead and react to what you're hearing, send through your questions, and we'll pick up a few and answer them. And to our in-person audience, if you have a question or comment right now, I think, Frenny, you will be ready to take questions in a bit. Just after this round of conversation, if you have a question, preferably a question. Questions keep the conversation going. When we say mine is just a comment, then we just kind of like go on this tangent, which is quite hard to manage, right? I don't want to play bad cop during this conversation. I want to be good cop always. So just prepare your question, right? So do you have any experiences of support that you've received? And what are some of the ways that you are paying that forward, helping someone else coming up? Hinda?
I will say my mom and my female friends, because they believe me. I am in the level of now I'm sitting. And when you see someone like female who is supporting you, is different from the other gender, because they know the challenge that you are facing, and they know the opportunity that you have, and the struggle that you are going through it. And by getting to your mom and to your female friends, like your close friends, is the best way that you can get support and share with your ideas and your dreams. If the surrounding of your environment is not good, you cannot reach anywhere. So I believe those my friends they supported me to reach my dreams.
Absolutely. That support system is so important, and I'm so glad that you have that. What about you, Melissa? What kind of support have you received, and how are you paying that forward?
Oh, a lot of support. And I love that we began with by acknowledging the women who've come before us. So since, mentors from, I have in mind just kind of mentorship sessions from university days, up to, but specifically with regard to Africa Podfest, there are so many people we had conversations with. Well, not say so many people, but there are quite a number of women who are in not necessarily the media sector, so a combination, who, we kind of spoke with from the idea phase, and they said, this is great. They asked, they had questions, they encouraged where they needed to encourage, they kind of poked holes in it in a constructive way. People we've called in moments of crisis, tough moments, and they've kind of just given us their honest perspective. And but then it's always up to you still to decide, because it's your thing, it's your business. We've had women from all over the world, ever since, like you say, ever since we started this, just send, we have a page where individuals can support us, buy us a coffee. So we have some people who have, when you check the records, people who've been buying us coffees every month for the past 3 years. And that's their way, you kind of just know from a distance of supporting us in whatever capacity they can. So definitely we do run on support from a lot of women, and many of whom, the other thing is, sometimes they can't also be very, just because of the positions they're in and so on, can't necessarily come out and shout from the rooftops, but they do support it however way they can. So I believe I've also personally and as a team, we've received support from so many spaces as well that were unexpected. But I will say it's so important to just, as a human being, acknowledge that you're not here by some mistake, right? I do not believe there's such a thing as a self-made anything, a self-made anyone. Yes, of course, you're the captain of your own life, and you make the choices that you do that have, led us to all be here and everyone who's in the room. But then just acknowledging that we're here because of those who've come before us and who continue to hold us up, and therefore that we are part of a chain as well. So I'm a link, and everyone that I come across and in any way that I can support right now, it's my duty really to provide support wherever I can. So how we do that at Africa Podfest is we have an open door sort of office hours approach, where we provide mentorship, support, guidance in any way we can to up and coming podcasters, women who are not necessarily even trying to do podcasting, but who are trying to start something. Where we can, we support even financially in our time. It matters so much, I will say. And sorry, just to round up this response, the biggest impact we've had and what I'm proudest of from Africa Podfest, beyond the nice numbers and the big name items that we've accomplished, is actually whenever people come to us and say, because you started this and I came to an event or I read a report or I followed your social media, I felt affirmed and I felt inspired and I felt like courageous by meeting everybody else who's in this space you've created. And for me, just that one person felt, they moved from self-doubt into super confidence. That's enough.
Wonderful. On that note of support and solidarity, I'd like to ask Feni to just take a round of questions. Any question from what you've heard today? And if there are none, I will very quickly continue to talk.
Thank you for the opportunity. My name is Susan. I support young girls with sanitary towels. I'm not really into media, though I did study media in university. So we've talked about how women have been able to hold your hands, but I would like to ask, have you had any men who have held your hands? And we know currently there's this debate where, before you get a favor from a man, then you have to offer something. Is that a challenge all of you have been able to experience?
Can I take that?
Anyiko, please take that.
Thank you for asking that, because I wanted to say something, but our super host here did not give me a chance.
Go for it. You have the chance. Go for it.
I want to credit and shout out all the men who supported me. Actually, all my major, positions or first jobs were given to me by males. They saw me for who I was, a young, journalist who was inquisitive and wanted an opportunity, gave that to me, then they trained me. So my first producer at the BBC was Thomas Japani. He's the one who runs the radio stations at Standard Media. So he's a very accomplished broadcaster, and he taught me very well. He was very strict, but he was a really good teacher. At KBC, the person who auditioned me and trained me all through the years is called JB Ohaga. He's also a very established broadcaster and has produced so many other similar shows, even for DSTV and Maisha Magic. At Coke Studio Africa, I was also hired by a male, and he was actually from West Africa. So he didn't know me. He didn't even watch KBC. He didn't know about Sauti. So it was just purely by the proposal I wrote to Coke Studio. He was called Paul Otome. And, that was also a career-changing opportunity. And then now with my podcasting career, Dana said changed everything for me, because I actually came here to Baraza with a client to do an interview at a different podcast. And I was just sitting here minding my business on my phone, responding to my clients. And Dana said, I came and said, after this, see me in my office. And I was like, oh my God, what have I done? And he immediately told me, which one is your podcast? And it was so funny, because I had produced a first series of my podcast in 2021, but I never made it public because a lot of the interviews had been repurposed from the past. And I felt like there's no need to make a lot of noise about repurposed content. There's only one original thing. So I showed him, and he was like, why don't I know about this? And why didn't you, promote it? And I tried to explain to him, and he told me, so between 2021 and now, now that was late 2022, he asked me, why haven't you, produced your podcast? And so I explained to him, it's very challenging, it's very expensive. I have to collect crew members from different places. I have to carry my own equipment because I own my studio equipment. And then once I get on set, because I'm not a technical professional, I've forgotten all the lapel mics, or we record 4 interviews and I get home and the sound is missing. And then I have to call the artist to redo the interviews again. So Dan told me, stop right there. I need you to come here to Sema Box, start recording your podcast. And that was it. Like, my life changed, my problems were solved. So, yet another man who opened, the door for me. So I think there are a lot of, not just men and women, but a lot of spaces that are very supportive. So I think as we navigate the industry and the difficulties, we must have our eyes open to those who are supportive. I think institutions like Baraza Media Lab, Alliance Française, Goethe Institute, British Council, the Embassy of Sweden, the Australia High Commission, who made this possible and who are also supporting my work and my podcast, are very, important people in the industry who are supporting. So if one person is closing the door at you, there will be many doors open. You just need to look and ask the right people or follow the right channels. Yeah, thanks.
Thank you for that, Anyiko. One more question from the audience, and then I'll ask Frenny to also take one question from our online audience. Oh, and there's one more back there. I can see her. So 2 here and then 1 from online. Go for it.
Hello, thank you. Let me greet you with the Islam greetings. Peace be upon you all. What I wanted to ask the panel is, I'm from a community that is a bit conservative. I think Hinda understands it more. We have so many occasions where women issues are discussed by men, How can we convince, the population that women can discuss, report, and bring solutions to the problem? Yeah.
I'll ask Frenny to take the question there at the back as well, and then we'll answer them together. Right there. How can we position women as experts? Yes.
I'll pose my question to Anyiko and Melissa, and it's with regards to podcasts. I understand from the crowd, we have a lot of young people, and I'm not audible enough? Oh, sorry. Hi.
Yes, I can hear you. Go for it.
So my question is to Melissa and Anyiko, and just having a quick survey in the room, I can see a lot of young people, and I'm assuming you've all come across the different podcasts that are out there, or the short clips from YouTube Shorts and TikTok. And I'll wish, pardon for branding the content as somewhat secular. What will be your maybe input or advice to us young people when it comes to doing podcasts with targeted messages, like, for example, climate change, women empowerment, and so forth and so forth? And why I'm asking this is because not many of us have been exposed to applying for grants and whatnot. So we just bend towards the secular ones because a brand will pop off on us and support us and whatnot. Because at the end of the day, as much as we are doing this podcast thing, we're taking it serious and we want to generate some sort of income out of it. Thank you very much.
Generalist audience versus like positioning yourself for niche. Hinda, I think I'll let you take the first question. I also have some comments about that, which I will throw in. But go ahead.
Jamal, thanks. In Somalia or in Somali community or in Africa in generally, like you will see a male discussing about or talking about women's issue. Well, women, they are not in the room. And I was like, what are you telling your, like, the community that you are talking about, they are not here. And who are you telling, what the thing that we are talking about? In our media now, we are changing that, and we talk about always like the hygiene, and invite women and also the male who interested to talk about those, because they have their own idea and the subject that they are believing. And when they come together, even if we come together, I think we can produce important issues and exchange ideas. But if you get only one gender in the room and you are talking about a gender who is not here, I don't think that the thing is going to change. And if we need the things and gender issue to change, we need to work together and stay together and share the ideas and not believe in me like I'm woman and I can't say anything about myself. I can speak for myself, not I don't want to like to talk for me, because I know a young girl what she's feeling and all women what she's feeling, and I know the experience. But if I see the room, I can represent her and I can show you like the other side that you are seeing. So I think we need to stay together in the room by lifting not any other gender.
Perfect.
And then to your question on generalist versus niche podcasts, well, to begin with, do what's authentic. Like before you even press record on that mic, be very clear about why you're doing that podcast, for whom, and who it is you're speaking to. Who's this community you're targeting? Because flowing from that, sort of the answer to your question will then emerge. And what I mean by this is that you might be surprised to find out that most of the podcasts that are sustainable, like that are financially attracting resources, are niche, not necessarily. Yes, there are the top, popular ones, mainly run by influencers and so on. But many of the, even for the top podcasts, the famous ones, let me say, household name ones, the ways they're earning money, the reasons why they're partners, whether they're commercial brands or nonprofits or individuals, the reason they're attracting sponsorship is not necessarily because they have millions of views. It's because they understand, they're very clear who they're speaking to, what they're saying, why, and what problem they're solving. So in other words, what value they're adding that corresponds to what the partner who's writing the check cares about, right? So I wouldn't worry so much about, should I become popular? Should I? And Anyiko works with, the big fund brands, but I think you should also respond from that other side, yeah?
No, I would say the same thing.
The same thing,
yeah.
It's more important to know have you heard the term USP, your unique selling point, your purpose, your why? Do you? And in podcasting, that's what attracts your audience and will retain your audience. Grow from there. Don't worry if you have 10 listeners for your first episode. You just keep at it, work on, invest in all the strategies and tactics there are for growing your audience, and then build on partnerships from there. Some of the highest, like I was saying, some of the highest paid podcasters in Africa, you've never heard of them because they're very niche in something so technical. Like there's one in like cloud computing, I think, and another one in like tourism, but something very specific in tourism. So yeah.
That's true. That's some of your research work has actually kind of emerged that insight that podcasting creates this opportunity for like super niche content, but also maybe super niche support, right? Yeah. Super niche funding. So on the experts question, I just want to throw this in there, that Anyiko, you had said earlier that when you would go out to do vox pops on the streets, women would not want to be on camera, right? And that's something that is very challenging for journalists, for producers, even if you have like philosophically or like your values is that I want women represented in my products, in my programs. I want to quote them as experts. I want to, I don't want to curate a manual, for example. And so you try to like reach out and make sure that you have women. But then you come into this kind of like challenges, right? But I think fixing it is actually requires you to do a little bit extra work, because if you take the normal route, like the manuals will keep being recreated. Like it's like almost like gravity, right? It's how our society works. It's some structural things that make women less able, even if they're willing, they're less able to be available for late night interviews. Like your show is starting at 10 and who knows when it will end, 11:45. Like, why are we on this panel until that time, right? So, and do you offer transport there? Do you offer transport home? Will you pay for the Uber? So little structural things like this. But if you're not thinking of the structural stuff, you're just like, well, yeah, I mean, I called and then they said they're not available. So what do we do? Let's just have a manual of 5, you know. But it's just that extra hurdle to like make it happen, right? And in conclusion, just to share some data, in 2015, I had tons of time. And so I watched 100 episodes of a very popular Kenyan TV show, which I will not mention. Out of those 100 shows, 100 shows had 100 guests. And out of the 100 guests, there were 84 men over the course of a year. So those 16 women guests, now I rewatched those ones, like I watched them twice, because remember, like I said, I had tons of time. And then out of the 16, 12 of those women were actually guests on the show because of something tragic that had happened to them. And it was more like inspirational. Oh my God, what you've been through, what you've overcome. Wow, tell us more. You know, like just digging them for their pain, you know, and then at the end of it, the conclusion is like, wow, that's amazing. Next time we have back to our, you know, it was like, you know, like just, you know, and then at the end of it, it's like, yes, wow, great. Next time, you know, shifting quickly. It was horrible, actually. And it tells you like, I don't know if that particular TV host cared that much about representation, but I'm just saying that it can actually go to that point where you think that a woman being on your show, what she brings most is like this kind of like overcoming narrative, you know, like they have gone through something really painful. And I think if we have that consciousness that women can be experts about anything, not only about women's pain, right? I think it would take us to the next level. I want to take our last question from our online audience. Frenny, no questions from the online audience. So yeah, so I will allow one more question back there as we are just about to wrap up.
2, you have 2. Can you take 2?
Yes, we can take 2.
My name
1 and 2.
is Rehab. I run the lifestyle blog potentash.com. Anyiko, you raised a very important point about documenting. And I want you to talk a bit about how can women document all the work they're doing, because as you said, it's being erased. Even when we think about history, we know about the men's contribution to Mau Mau or whatever, but the resistance, but we never hear about the women. So please talk about ways in which women can document what they're doing so that their work is not erased.
Good afternoon. My name is Renelle. I run a project for USAID to do communications for Kenya and Somalia. And I remember when Bilan came out and we were at the Mogadishu Book Fair and we saw images like this one, you know, of very unconventional photos of women behind cameras. And it was striking to me. And I know we've talked a lot about women being in front of the camera, but I do think that there is a lot of clout and credibility that comes when you know the technical aspects of your work. And there's so few, we have internships available, and there's so few women that want to do photo and video production. There's so few women that want to do design. How can we change that? Because I think a lot of times we've allowed ourselves to be overstepped on the technical aspects, and we need to bring that back into our realm as women and not shy away from it.
any of you can respond to it, well, and then I will ask us just the last question, which
you
will be
take a
like
third
one
one?
statement.
So I believe, like Bilan, we do the work as a female only because we do the photograph, we do the editing, we do the publishing, we do the writing, and we do in mobile. We don't use camera because they are too large. And if we take with us for the security issues, it's risky for us. So we use mobile journalism. And if you see Bilan female can do those work, I think other female in journalism, Africa or Somalia, they can do. And I think they need advocacy and awareness that they need to learn the technical and the skills. Because if you learn the skills, you can go, whether if you are man or woman, you can do, you know? So I think we need awareness and believe in ourselves and doing the work and know what we need in the capacity building when it comes to media.
And on Rehab's question?
Thank you, Rehab, for the question. I think this is how I want to answer it. So we need to write our stories. We need to be knowledgeable, and then we need to continue educating ourselves as to what we're I mean, where do I fall? Like, I was part of this project, where do I fall? Am I in the technical crew? Am I in the creative team? And once you know where you fall, I think then you know how to get the credit. And it's crazy because even as you continue to navigate this industry, there's always new things you learn and you're like, oh my God, I didn't know that. Like, I was watching the documentary on First Ladies of Hip Hop on Netflix during the 50 years of celebration of hip hop. And a lady was talking about how she made certain collaborations happen and she didn't get A&R credit on, you know, all these big productions. And I was like, oh my God, I did all the collaborations for Sauti Sol and I have no credit to date, right? So even once I saw that on the documentary, I started thinking, if I don't acknowledge myself and have it written somewhere or actually speak about it, then nobody will ever know and I will not have the credit. So I think once we know our contribution or what we did, that's a fact. We have to add it in our bios. We have to speak about it if we get a chance. And I think that also encourages other young professionals who are doing the same thing to know that they will need to be credited. Because when I was doing it, I never had the name A&R. In fact, for my first 5 years as a publicist, I had never had the name publicist. It's actually Sauti Sol who came and presented it to me and said, we have researched a lot and we think you do a lot of things for us, but you're mainly our publicist. I didn't even know that existed. So I'm sure there are many other niche careers that we could already be doing and we are not aware. So I think we just need to, you know, track back the work that we've done, credit ourselves, say it out loud, write it in our websites and reference our work. That's the most important thing. A lot of times when I meet even other artists and they ask me, who have you worked with? What have you done? When I tell them like this is what I've done, they actually don't believe. But for certain work that is referenced, obviously they can go and see like Yemi Alade's video with Angelique Kidjo, you know, produced by me, Anyiko. You can just go to YouTube and see. So there's so much power when you have done certain work and it's referenced, because that actually leads you to your next. So it's important to insist for the credit if you still can and if it can be up somewhere. Yeah.
On that note, we have 2 minutes left and one question that I will ask each of you to answer in one sentence. And the question is this, one sentence. The question is this: what happens when women take control of media spaces? What changes? Hinda, go for it. What changes? In one sentence, what changes when women take control of media spaces?
In media, or I would say in media, fairness and continent focus.
Right. So, and
the economic model changes because the audience, the representation changes, which then shapes the way the audiences move, which then shapes the way the money flows.
Love it. Anyiko, what changes?
I think there's a consciousness to how women approach, you know, their work, and over and above that, there's consideration for other women. You know, even things like women should take taxi if it's late at night, or if I'm interviewing a woman, I know she needs more time because she has to do her makeup and all that. I consider that because I'm a woman and I understand. And even if a woman tells me I can't show up because I'm having my periods, I totally understand. So I think there's just more consideration for females. Yeah.
More consideration. Do we have one last question from our online audience? Go for it. We can squeeze that in so that we have their presence and participation.
So we have a question from Marianne Daka, based in Lusaka, Zambia. And she asks, how have partnerships between women-led media institutions across Africa fostered collaboration and empowerment for women in the media industry?
Collaboration. I think Melissa has this one.
Yeah.
Go for it.
We've collaborated, first of all, just met, and sort of when you're present and you stand up and you make yourself seen and heard, like Anyiko is saying, you attract a lot of other, women leaders or people who are in the margins. And so for us, our experience has been really wonderful, just how many women-led media organizations, one, exist in so many different countries, and two, who are doing really powerful ground shaping, let me not even say groundbreaking, ground shaping things. Including when we kind of started, as Christine mentioned earlier, when the idea started and we started as Africa Podfest, it so happened that we found Baraza Lab, led by Christine, was already also starting. So yes, it's for us, in my experience at Africa Podfest, we've interacted with a lot of women-led organizations.
Awesome. On that note, we have come to the end of our time. Thank you so much to our panelists. A hand of applause for our panel. Thank you to our in-person audience and to our online audience as well. Thank you for listening, for following, for participating in this. And I have been your host, Christine Mungai. Very amazing conversation. Anyiko, you've inspired me to rework my bio, which I'm going to do after this. I need to rework my bio and put in all the stuff that I've done.
I actually recommend for bios to be updated every month, because if you don't, so many things happen and you forget.
Thank you. Rework your bios, please, after this. Thank you.